My clock shows 7 o'clock. At this point, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Andover Planning and Zoning Commission to order. For roll call tonight, I see Ann Cremay, Scott Person, Steve Nelson, and myself as regular members. I see alternates Ann Blanchard, Kevin Arneson, and Susan England. And according to my listing, Leanne did tell me that she would probably not be able to join us tonight. And so next up for the alternates is Ann Blanchard. So Ann, I will seat you in place of Leanne.
Sounds good.
Next up is additions or changes to the agenda. Does anybody have any additions or changes to discuss? And I had one, if time allows, and I think it will, I'd like to add new item 7C under new business, the annual report of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Any other items to add or change? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to add discussion of the annual report as new business item 7. Charlie?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Ann Cremay?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Ann Blanchard?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes 5-0-0. Next up is public comment. I do see that we have a couple members of the public here tonight. Elaine Bouchard, you just joined us. You have anything for us at this point?
Nope, thanks. Just listening to the POCD discussion.
Okay. And I think I see Catherine Hutchinson. Do you have any comments for us at this point, Ms. Hutchinson?
Not at this point.
Okay.
If I could be allowed to comment during the gravel pit discussion, please.
Absolutely. And I guess that's next up, moving on to old business. First topic up is the gravel pit discussion, and I will turn that over to Agent Halsey at this point.
Yes, in the minutes, it indicated that I would meet with the owner, Bill Genovese, and his engineer, Chris Bell, on the 16th of August. That did not happen. It happened later, following week. And I did not make a lot of progress. I tried to stick to the plan. And Bill, the owner, was arguing why another approach is better. Specifically, he didn't want to put the loam in, and he was okay with the way the water drained. And I followed up with a letter which was posted, basically reiterating what I maintained at that meeting. And Chris Bell submitted a letter the weekend, I believe, with really a request for a revision of the plan, eliminating the need for eliminating the installation of any additional topsoil and changes to the drainage pattern. I have no further, I mean, at this point, the only suggestion I have is to approach Mark Branson, where to go with it. Whether he thinks it's appropriate to call a bond, whatever. It's not even to bring it in.
Okay. I don't know, if any of the commission members had the opportunity to, see the letter. Yeah, I just sent it out this afternoon. I think Jim only got it yesterday. So, apologize for the late, send out on that, but, it was sort of, a short letter. I can call it up. Well, I can try and call it up on screen, if we haven't seen it, but, essentially, they don't want to put in any topsoil. They think the vegetative growth is good. And he is saying that his as-built drawing, although different than what was approved, results in 15% less water drainage to the area on the right-hand side of the property. And since, based on the discussion that we had when we approved the restoration plan back in August of 2022, there was supposed to be no water draining onto the property to the right. I don't see how you can reduce that by 15%. But anyhow, at this point, I'll turn. I'll ask if any of the commission members have any questions for Jim about where we are on that.
I looked at the as-built that he sent over. There's only really one section there that drains over to the right, and it's a very small section that it drains towards the river, actually. It's not supposed to be draining that way, but I'm saying that it's a very small area that does drain towards.
Granted, it's also not realistic to say that no water would drain towards the south.
Right.
There's
Exactly.
the Hall Road, which is essentially in the low flood grade, flood zone, which really can't be touched, and the angle proposed that follows that road out back.
It looks like it's only 30 or 40 feet that drains towards the river. But
I
none of
agree.
it's supposed to.
Well,
Basically a ridge that's set back from the Hall Road.
Mhm.
There's an area of probably 20 feet along that road for much of it.
Any other thoughts on that, Scott?
No.
Any other commission members have any comments for Jim at that point?
Jim,
Okay.
are you okay with how it is?
Who are you asking that to, Scott?
Jim.
I mean, the commission did represent that water would flow a certain way, so that, I mean, that would have to be a revision, or a minor correction, which is, I think, very, very appropriate. As far as the topsoil, I don't see bringing in 4 inches of topsoil for that parcel. I do want to see stabilization. And I did request permission to walk the property. I've had some issues in the past, a little volatility with that. And I did just recently ask permission to walk it, take a look at what is on site as far as stabilization, what seed is taken. I mean, it's sparse. Whether it's going to hold or not, I can't tell.
Not what you would like to see.
I would, quite honestly, I was hoping that he would come up with some sort of compromise. I don't think his revised proposal was much of a compromise. That he could have offered something.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the other thing, to keep in mind for everybody, and again, I'm not sure that the drainage, I guess the problem I have with the drainage is in the email that Jim got that had the response letter in it. He has a drawing that's marked approved August 15th, 2022 restoration plan.
Yeah, if I can address that, oh, sorry.
But go ahead, Jim. Go ahead and address that then.
And Chris Bell submitted with his letter plan that was different than the approved plan and alluded to it as the approved plan and was posted as such. I was hoping that I tried to correct that. And I'm not sure how that worked out, but honestly, I didn't. That was I just recently did that and it may have created further confusion.
So we don't need to get into it in too much detail tonight, but if you go back in the archive, in the one all the way at the bottom is the gravel pit. I think that's about the first application that we started archiving electronically. And it's got a restoration plan, 8/15/22, that we approved at a meeting. Subsequent to that, Chris Bell sent, and that showed the high point being, essentially right at the edge of where it drops off down to the roadway. So everything would run back towards the center into a little detention pond. He submitted something that talked about the approved plan later on. And we relabeled that in the archive to the non-approved plan of 8/15/22. That's the one that has a high point ridge somewhere more towards the center of the property than at the edge where it slopes off, and has drainage arrows going both ways. So that was not the approved diagram. And I don't know what made him think that was until he submitted it. Some point later, that was the first time I had ever seen that thing, and we had talked about that at the time. And then he put in the as-built, which I didn't really compare in all that detail because I thought it had, I just didn't know of any basis for assuming there'd be 15% less drainage. Now, there could have been for what he wrote is the approved plan, but in my mind, that was never the approved plan, because the approved plan that we talked about in August 15th was a plan that had all arrows running towards the center. And the west side of the boundary was supposed to be at an elevation lower than the east side, so that if the detention basin filled in, it would overflow to the west and drain back to the river that way. So this, to my point, this is just another poke in the eye that I can understand Mr. Genovese's, desire to not bring in a bunch of topsoil, but I don't see any topsoil out there on the lot now. I'm not exactly sure. I got a guess of what happened to the topsoil that was in the storage area. I think that's buried under the new fill that he had to put down to raise it up to the proper elevation. But nothing has gone according to the plan that he presented and we approved since this project started. And I just don't think that's the standard that we can allow to be acceptable. So anyhow, that's my thought on that. And so I think Jim, in his reaching out to Mark Branch at this point, and I do not necessarily want to be punitive, but I don't know what the right answer is out there. There's some spots that probably need some topsoil. I acknowledge there's some vegetation that's growing out there. Looks pretty sparse to me on the different times I've been out there. But we have certainly not, he has not complied with his plan that we approved, and I got a bit of a problem with that. So I think Jim's on the right course. And we have certainly bent over backwards to try and suit him. Ms. Hutchinson, I know you have been patiently following this saga for the last 4 years. Any comments for us this evening?
I agree with you that everything that you said with regard to the approved plan. And I also agree that now would be the time to turn it over to Mark Brandt.
Yeah, I know he was supposed to have been complete with the restoration plan last May. We delayed till September, with mid-September being, he's got to have grass seed down about now if we wanted to get anything to germinate before the end of the year and be sure that it got a good start. And it's not, so I'm not sure where to go. Might need some engineering help on the best way to get out of this at this point. But the next step is to engage our land use attorney. And that's what Jim's doing. Okay, any other comments from anybody on the gravel pit?
When did Jim contact Mark?
I just let him know today. I shared it with him, Chris Bell's response plan. Which I just got. I was waiting for that to.
And I
see
think
what they
Mark,
had to
he's a
offer.
fairly aggressive fella. He'll hop on that, but Jim and I just went over the response we got from Chris Bell today, and that was the appropriate thing to do.
Right, okay.
Okay, at that point, I'm going to move down to old business 6B, which is proposed revisions to the zoning regulations. And wanted to talk in general about a couple of things here. One of which was we had talked a couple times about the accessory dwelling unit, accessory apartments, that sort of thing. And I thought I was zeroing in on what I considered a reasonable approach for the commission to take a look at. I sent that off to Mark Brandt, and one of his comments was that he continues to strongly encourage towns to make accessory dwelling units affordable housing, which is a deed restricted thing for 10 years as opposed to 40 years, which a house would have. Being not the smartest guy in the world on how all the housing things work, I said, okay, well, that's pretty easy. That is, all that means is that we have to rent restrict what can be charged. And I think that's well below the threshold for what you would charge for an accessory apartment anyhow. I think, an accessory apartment would be affordable in terms of what you get there. So last month, when I was meeting with Eric and John, and I was discussing the plan, John's comment, his feedback was, well, you might be discouraging people from building accessory apartments because there's paperwork that you have to do to document that the people going in are eligible for affordable housing. And that was a new thought to me. I had never considered the fact that we would have to restrict who can rent the accessory dwelling unit to those people. My experience in each of the accessory apartments that we've approved so far is that they were all for family members.
Right.
And we made arrangements so that when the family member, no longer needed the apartment, it could be rented out. But I didn't recognize the burden on the property owner of going through that. So I went back to Mark Branch and said, Mark, what do you know about this? How, is this the way it works? And how does it work? How do you implement that plan? And he said, well, most towns have, a housing authority that tracks all that stuff. And we don't have that. So it would be something for Jim to do. And I'll ask John to chime in later on if he's got any experience with any other towns. But Mark Brantz's, bottom line comment was, are you going to do something about affordable housing or not? And if people want to make an accessory dwelling unit, accessory apartment, and the only way to do that is affordable, then they will probably sign up to that. I was thinking, I looked to the future. At some point, I might want to go into an accessory apartment, living at one of my kids' houses. And fortunately, I wouldn't meet the income requirement that's required to live there. And I said, maybe that's not the way we want to go here. But we could probably go either way. And it's not like we're building a ton of these things, but I was trying to get looking for some feedback from the commission members on whether they thought still requiring an accessory apartment to be affordable was the right way for us to go in an effort to try and make some headway on affordable housing. And John, before I open it up to the commission, did you have anything to add? Do you have any experience on managing the admin in there?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I've worked with a couple of towns, and again, I mean, Mark Brantz is correct that there's usually an established administrative procedure for this housing authority, which goes through and does annual income verification. But it is a burden because in order for those accessory units to count towards the town's 830G, list, it's goals toward the 10% state threshold. It does need to be accounted for on an annual basis. And so you need to go through those income verification procedures and basically get the tax returns of the tenant, which is kind of a hassle. And most affordable housing landlords or housing authorities sort of have someone that's job is to do that. So I mean, I think it's worth stepping back and just saying, what is the goal here? Is the goal to promote accessory apartments in general, or to try to leverage accessory apartments specifically as a way to make progress towards the state 10% goal? And if it is that latter thing, the towards the state goal, then we should think about assisting or providing some sort of incentive to those people that are going to restrict their unit. Because again, not only is there an administrative burden, but restricting it to those people that are in the lower income bracket means that you will be restricted in what you can rent the thing for. So in theory, you're foregoing some rent, some percentage of market rent. So it's a little bit of insult to injury. And so if you're trying to encourage people to do this, you should at least try to make it easier for them to do so.
Now, it's my impression that whatever rent we would charge for the small unit there is well below the threshold of what somebody making 80% of the median income would be. I know when we did our study, we said somebody on that income could afford to buy a $300,000 house. I figured the rent for any accessory dwelling unit would be well below what you would pay on a 4-bedroom home. And so I don't know that you're giving up rent per se. And again, I was thinking that in most cases, it starts out being, housing for a family member, either just starting out or just ending up. And But I would hate to preclude somebody from being able to take advantage of that kind of a deal because we can't go through the admin that is required to provide that help to our family members if we chose to do so.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead, Ann.
If you go through and make this the affordable thing, does that mean that somebody can't build an accessory apartment for their family member if it's not affordable? I mean, like, we have an in-law apartment on our house and we built it not because the in-laws couldn't afford a bigger house. It's just that we wanted them close by for being able to help them, to prevent going into an assisted living or a nursing home. So that's why we built it, not because it had to be affordable. Would that prohibit building that kind of an in-law accessory apartment?
Certainly for the way we were proposing the accessory apartment thing, it would. It just says all accessory apartments will be affordable, having 10-year rent restrictions on it. And Ann, your situation was exactly what I was looking at to say that was a wonderful plan you had. And would we do that? Now it sounds like John was gonna disagree with me there, so I'll go back to him so he can make us all smarter on how we might choose to get around that.
No, sorry, Jed, you're correct. I had forgotten that's what was on the table was mandating that if you do an accessory apartment, it needs to be restricted. So if that regulation goes in place or is in place, then Jed's answer is correct. I think what I meant to say is it certainly doesn't need to be that way.
But it gets back to, providing an incentive for a guy to put the rent restriction in there. And I wasn't sure how to do that. So anyhow, the bottom line at this point is that's why I'm not bringing the accessory apartment thing that I thought was very close back to you guys. Is it ran off the rails here within the last month, and I haven't figured out how to get it back on the track yet. So no more discussion on that.
Can I make a possible suggestion?
Sure, go ahead, Eric.
Is that you leave yourself an out and you say that as of right, you can build accessory dwelling units in all residential zones. But they have to be affordable housing. By special permit, you can build one and have it not be affordable housing. That way you put the burden on them to prove why they want to not do it as affordable housing. If they want to just do it, it's automatically affordable housing. If they want to argue with you about it, maybe you allow them to do it some other way.
Okay, I like that thought, and I'll take that back and try to build that in for what we're looking at there, because that's the kind of solution I would, I'm looking for, is that provide some incentive, and I don't know what that would be, or provide an out. And maybe the incentive is you don't have to do the paperwork of going through a special permit. That might be incentive enough for some people to make it affordable.
What does John think about that?
John, you want to comment?
I'm sorry, what do I think of Eric's?
Of what Eric's suggestion was?
Yeah, no, and again, I think that's if this commission is of the mindset that you want to do what you can to use accessory apartments as a mechanism for doing more to meet the state threshold, then I think Eric's suggestion is a good one. That, the low hanging fruit, which is to say the as of right, administrative zoning permit would be the restricted unit. And if you want to avoid that, then you would go through a more complicated process of a special permit. So yeah, that puts the incentives in the right place. And it doesn't outright prohibit someone like Ann from doing a unit, an unrestricted unit for a family member.
Right. Yeah. That sounds like a good idea to me too.
It
Okay.
seems like it still discourages people from doing accessory dwelling units. I think it would be better if there was a way to incentivize people to do the affordable housing without putting a burden on them to go through a special permit process if they don't want to do that. Is there, John, do you have any experience with that where there's incentives that we can offer?
Yes. So there's a couple of incentives that could be considered, and I'm just giving examples here. I'm not necessarily advocating something specifically for Andover, but some municipalities have considered providing a tax abatement that essentially that the added value of the property for that accessory unit, they add whatever increased value, would be taxable, could be abated, or the town could offer a tax, rebate or incentive of a couple $100 or something like that a year to do this. And if the town had administrative resources, and this is done primarily by larger towns or towns with a more robust administrative staff or a housing authority, is to basically offer to help people do that paperwork every year. So basically to eliminate those pain points.
I think those are good ideas. I like the tax abatement issue. If somebody goes affordable housing, that's an incentive. I think it's less, the approach we're taking is, I think, more punitive and discourages people from creating accessory dwelling units. I think if you do the tax abatement, it's more of an incentive approach, carrot versus a stick.
I'm not sure, Steve, that, again, I think the rents on most accessory dwelling units are low enough that they meet the threshold for affordable housing right off the bat. It's only a question of getting out of that admin of verifying that your tenant meets the threshold to go in there. And maybe I didn't dig a lot into the tax incentives because I don't think we've got the staff, and I thought that was clearly something that's not in Jim's thing to do. I don't know. I guess I would go back to Eric. Eric, does the town have the wherewithal to manage a tax incentive? I know we're trying to get the tax rolls up, not down, but we do, I always like carrots more than sticks.
I think you would have a tough time convincing the Board of Selectmen that that was an appropriate venue. They've been pretty reticent to allow tax incentives, which is why we have no PA 490 for farms in Andover.
Yep.
So would they do it for affordable housing? You would have to make a really great case for it. And then you might get them to agree to it, but that would be a discussion between the zoning commission and the Board of Selectmen. That's certainly not anything I could influence on.
Okay, well, we'll consider that. My thought was pretty much in line with Eric that there's a lot of tax incentives that we're not doing, and that's what's going to make the affordable housing thing a tough nut for us to crack as we get into it more. But accessory dwelling units certainly will continue to add to the role of natural affordable housing. We just don't get any credit for it. And so is natural affordable housing good? Yes, I think it is. Is it too bad that we don't get any credit? I wish there was a way we could do that too, because it's certainly easier to just go out and let the market dictate those smaller rents for smaller houses and apartments. Anything else on accessory apartments at this point? The other thing that I just wanted to mention under this item here was, I think it was either last meeting or the meeting before, Eric, briefed us on a desire to change the sign regulations and the lighting regulations. He was, we're talking about lighting up some athletic fields and that sort of thing. And maybe putting some banners over on the fence around the track. And at the same time, allowing the banners at the school to be hung higher than 10 feet. I was out for quite a bit of the month since the last meeting here, and so I asked Eric not to submit that one because I didn't want that clock to start yet. But I'd be happy to entertain a petition to change the regulations from Eric at the next meeting and get that show on the road. I have given it some thought. I do have, the biggest thing that I was concerned with, and Eric did exactly what I asked him to do, was go out and provide an input. So I understand what it is that you're looking to do. The input certainly would take care of anything that the Board of Selectmen wanted to do. My concern was it gave too much latitude to the Board of Selectmen, took too much away from being looked at by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I'm trying to put some kind of guardrail in there that keeps us from making a public interest sign that's 100 feet by 100 feet or something someplace. And certainly you don't think you would do that, but every time you have a strategy that starts out, I hope they don't do that. That strategy never lasts very long. So we got to put something in there. I haven't figured out exactly how to go about that yet, but rather than hash that out here tonight, I just wanted to let the commission know that we can expect to be seeing that from Eric at the next meeting, and I should be ready to provide a little bit of counter to his offer and seeing how the commission wants to go on that. And if the commission wants to go with exactly the way you put it in there, that's all fine and well too. But I want to make sure that we at least discuss having some protections against some wild and crazy ideas that could come at some point down the road. So any questions on that one? Okay, that gets us to new business. First item up is the John with the recap and discussion of the Plan of Conservation and Development Survey.
Okay. So first things first, I want to thank everyone, both on this commission and some of the other economic development or conservation who went ahead and helped out with the survey, or completing the survey online. Whoever is the host, I don't know if it's Jed or the town, if you could allow for screen sharing. I'll go ahead and put the summary on. Everyone has seen the survey itself, but basically at the end of the 2015 plan, there are 2 pages that sort of go through the 40 or so implementation.
Let him share.
John wants to share?
Yes, please.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Okay, go ahead and try, John.
Here we go. Thank you. So hopefully people can see that on the screen. I can make it a little bit shorter, smaller so it fits. Can people see that pretty well?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so these are the final 2 pages in the Plan of Conservation and Development, which is sort of an implementation task summary. I forwarded around this afternoon, so people hopefully got a chance to see it. And so based on the results of the survey, which again are here, it was a fairly lengthy survey, 48 questions and 48 implementation tasks, and people were asked to comment on the progress and relevance of the action steps that were identified in the 2015 Plan of Conservation and Development. Each question identified one of the action steps, and in this case, the first one was the to-do list item was adopt the Andover Rural Design Regulation, the ARD. And the options were, is this task that we're supposed to do over the 10-year cycle complete, not complete, but still important, not complete, but its relevance has sort of diminished, not sure of where it stands, but it's still a relevant thing, and then just straight not sure. And so I went through responses. In the case of ARD, people were fairly confident, significantly so, that it had been completed, and could be sort of checked off the list. And then there were a number of others that, let's see, I'm sort of scrolling through. So like I'm making an open space plan that's easily available to developers and landowners. Some people believe it was in progress. Some people believe it was not complete, and those two could be the same, but it's still relevant. And so what I basically looked for through this survey, again, 48 tasks, was to sort of sort through and identify those items that either were generally by consensus found to be primarily complete, or those things that were incomplete and in progress, but still very important. So I've sorted through this list. The blue check marks essentially mean that significant progress has been made, or the items are believed to be complete. And I would certainly look to this commission, look to Eric to sort of ground truth those. And then the orange stars were those items that were listed as incomplete or hadn't really gotten underway, but were still very relevant and important as a task to carry forward. And Jed, I'll also note we received sort of a commentary from the Economic Development Commission about these items, and I've incorporated their comments on the tasks that they've undertaken, and particularly on the second page where we look at Andover Town Center and creating an identity and sense of place. A number of those economic development things, and actually, well, it's probably on the promoting and regulating commercial development. A number of those elements in terms of working with property owners and encouraging economic development. I incorporated their comments there as well. So Jed, I would leave it to you if you want me to go through some of the things that people believed were relatively complete. But I think this is a pretty decent summary of where people felt like the town ended up, and things that were still important to focus on going forward.
Okay, so I know Elaine is with us tonight, and my thought, I spoke with Hank Gruner over the course of the last month with the chapter 8 on the conservation stuff, and told him that I thought what we would be doing was saving the conservation and economic development to next month, to invite them all after we had a chance to see how the other sections went, and that way not have them sit through a whole thing here. Elaine, you're here tonight. Would you prefer to discuss the economic development topics tonight, or would you prefer to hold those off until next month where you can have some other members join you? Or do you think asking them to attend another meeting is just too much to hope for, and you're going to take the message back to them?
But I'm just gonna take the message back to them.
Okay.
Because I mean, them is Kathy Palazzi. There's only 2 of us left, Jeff.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Sounds good. So, John, with that, I think if you could go through, we'll save the natural resources thing for next month, and we'll try to work our way through the rest of them here tonight, seeing how that goes.
Okay. So we'll sort of buzz through these a little bit, and we can pause for some comment. So the first several, and so we'll go up here, and this is Chapter 7, Managing Future Growth. Making this a little bigger, the priorities were adopting the Andover Rural District which people believed were primarily done. Rezoning areas of R40 to R80, and I'll toggle back and forth here. Commentary, there was a lot of uncertainty. Some people believed it was done, and that was maybe the people sort of on the inside of planning and zoning discussions, but most people weren't really sure where we are.
Well, and I knew this would have some variance in answers because we didn't go to R40 or R80. We made all the R40
R60.
60s.
Right.
And so there was probably some lack of understanding of how to answer that one best. But I do think we rezoned everything to a common zoning. Why we chose 60 instead of 80, not exactly sure. Eric can chime in if he's got something there, but we did standardize it all to a common lot size.
Yep, that's as I recall, that was the case. So we'll add that as a completion of a different type. Then promoting ARD subdivisions by allowing them as of right, that was generally believed to have been completed. Including low impact development and future developments, that would be I believe probably a regulatory change that would sort of encourage that sort of design to be incorporated into site planning. And again, most were believed that either uncertain or believed that it had been done. And then the last is consider requiring a special permit for conventional subdivision designs, which I suppose would then thereby sort of disincentivize conventional subdivision in favor of conservation or low impact subdivision.
And I do think that our current regulations require low impact design. We looked at that pretty hard when we were looking at the new senior community center. And
So, John, and just to be clear, the current regulations, so what it is all residential development is under the Andover Rural Design District. If you start with any piece of property that's bigger than 10 acres, the as of right subdivision is a conservation subdivision, which is 30,000 square foot lots with 40% designated to open space.
Mhm.
By special permit, you can do a conventional subdivision, but you have to prepare a plan both ways and convince the commission why a conventional, subdivision would work better on your particular site.
Right. Okay.
So I would say that's a check. Definitely.
So it is. Yeah. That has been done precisely as you describe it. Okay. That's great. All right. So the next one, I'm sorry, Jed, you want to skip through the natural resources?
yes, yeah, we'll
Okay.
cover that next time when we got those folks here.
So here we're going on, this is chapter 9, promoting and regulating commercial development. And let me scroll down. This is space. Okay, a couple more, sorry. So business retention and business attraction. People generally, nobody believed that was complete, although obviously business retention and business attraction are ongoing matters.
Correct.
So people believed it to be, important as an ongoing thing, which I think is certainly fair. That's not something you'd want to leave off.
I mean, it's definitely our ongoing charge with economic development to continue working on that.
Mhm. Okay, so the next one is further streamline development process and consider tax abatement ordinances. There was a lot of confusion. Some people thought it wasn't done, but still relevant. Others thought it was not done, but also not particularly a major priority. And then there was a little uncertainty. So we kind of had mixed feelings about this. And I'll pause a little bit for comment, but we'll move on in the interest of time. If someone has something to say, please feel free to jump in.
Well, I think Eric's comments on the tax abatement stuff are pertinent to this discussion here, and we certainly
Right.
not done anything to head down that path. Whether we should or not, don't know. And, I'll let Elaine and Kathy speak, to that issue as we put the new stuff in here, if they want to continue to push on that one.
Well, it's definitely a way of attracting commercial business. It's a way of, boosting up economic development. If we had a tool to give some kind of tax abatement, and as we discussed, if you can give some kind of tax abatement of people who want to do affordable housing units and play by the rules with that, that maybe we should be looking into doing that. But it certainly has to be part of a visionary plan of what direction we're going in. So, certainly it's a very valuable tool, and I know that we have never taken advantage of it here in town, but nobody has really pushed for it. So maybe in the future, we will come up with a reason to push for it.
Okay. Thanks, Elaine.
Next being adopt recommended zoning text amendments in business and industrial zones. A lot of uncertainty. Not sure what has been done about this, and so I'd turn to Jed or Eric about this.
Yeah.
So we have completed a lot of that. And the other thing we did is we added basically a floating zone that fits over the entire Route 6 corridor. That allows multi-use development. Very flexible multi-use development ability for you to come in as a developer and say, hey, this parcel, I think it should look like this, and we want to encompass this, and that would mix both residential and commercial development on the same parcel. And basically then the zoning commission reviews it as a preliminary design, says yes, changes the zone to that, and then they come back with the development proposal. So we did a lot of what the last planner recommended in terms of the zoning changes that cover the business and industrial zones. Not saying that there's plenty of other changes we could make, we certainly can, but I think we accomplished most of what we were calling for in the last POCD.
Okay.
Yep, I agree with that. Having looked through it a little bit to see, more of the detail of what we said we were going to do and what was done, I thought we came pretty close.
So relative to what was envisioned at the time, that has been undertaken for the most part.
I think so. Yep.
Okay, great. This is great stuff. Carefully evaluate future economic development areas of areas 1 through 6 in PZC workshop setting. Those reference, wait, did I miss that? Was that a question? Conduct, we may have missed I think that may have been left off the survey, with apologies.
I don't remember something like that.
Yeah. I'm not sure what that actually refers to. With apologies for leaving that off the survey. That was inadvertent. I'm not sure what areas 1 through 6 mean.
So I can answer that in short detail. One of the things we looked at in the last PUCD is that we're very limited in that our whole business and industrial zone is a narrow, very narrow strip down the Route 6 corridor. And the question became, are there other areas in town that would be amenable to expanded business or industrial areas? And Bill Warner identified 6 possibilities, and he laid out kind of the pluses and minuses in that. And the zoning commission, originally talked about maybe taking them parcel by parcel and considering rezoning them. But nothing has ever happened along those lines.
Okay, so is it fair to say that the evaluation had been done, the consideration had been done, but no sort of specific action had been taken?
Well, so POCD laid out the possibilities for those parcels.
Mhm.
But no real action has been done to really take them on parcel by parcel and say, okay, you know, is this possible? What are the constraints? What does the land actually look like? Those are more like theoretical, hey, these are large chunks, which is away from residential development that could potentially support something. And here's why.
That's well, I suppose I'm gonna take the liberty of calling that one at least considered, because that was the charge, was to consider it and to carefully evaluate, not necessarily take action. And relative to carrying something forward, I think, this group may want to take a fresh look at what's going on Route 6 and rethink the future of those things. So I'm gonna take the liberty of going ahead and saying that was dealt with. Consider retaining economic development consultant, which is, wait, oh, no, did I skip one here? I did. Conduct public hearing and rezone future economic development areas if deemed appropriate. This was deemed as not complete. However, I believe the Economic Development Commission in their notes said that, there was hearings and discussions about this, and consideration is still ongoing. So I consider this one actually sort of accomplished and ongoing, in terms of still a priority.
Yeah, that was
And
part
yeah.
of, John, that was all part of the LADA project
Mhm.
that we had for the Route 6 regional EDC with the 4 towns.
Right.
That and they went ahead and came up with their proposed plans and proposed area of development. And within Andover, we had the village node section over there by the church and the library and public works in that area. And so we actually have public hearings to go ahead and present those possibilities to the townspeople for economic development. And it was all very favorable. Everybody's like, yeah, that's pretty much a great idea. Nothing else went from that, except that planning and zoning then worked on trying to get that special mixed use zoning for Route 6 so that some of these things could actually exist, could come to fruition. So it was a series of workshops that were done throughout that whole process. And then when the Department of Transportation went ahead and kind of ran with that plan and started doing their traffic calming study, which went ahead and, embellished on that whole plan about what changes, like medians that can be put on Route 6 to go ahead and slow down traffic, things like that. That also became a public hearing, that the stuff that they had come up with, we went ahead and presented to the public. So, and once again, people were very excited about it, but of course we haven't done anything with it. So that's what I was saying, that, well, yeah, we've had public hearings and we've done the rezoning and, we're working on it, but it's kind of an ongoing thing once we have solid plans on what we're going to work on next.
Okay.
And John, maybe I could have been well off the mark on this, but when we talked about getting the part-time planner, it was always a hope that part-time planner, you could help us with the economic development tie-in too. And I had that hope with no understanding of what the economic development guy might do other than work to get somebody in here that would want to do something. And then we work with the zoning regs to make it possible to entice that guy to get here. But I don't know if that's how it works or not. But when you go back to all these things about, the economic development areas at a PZC workshop and all this stuff, we need somebody out there actually working on that if that's gonna come to fruition. And you'll
Yeah,
let us know whether or not that can possibly be you or anybody in your outfit or not. We're just starting to figure out how we're gonna use you as a planner.
Sure, and I think that's absolutely fair. I think, a good planner is really a person that is assisting the town actively in implementing those plans, not just writing, but implementing those plans. And a significant chunk of that implementation involves making those economic development elements happen, or assisting the town down that road. So, insofar as my scope is obviously first and foremost to assist this commission with this plan, I'm also, able to devote a significant amount of time with, assistance of some of Eric's efforts, particularly around grants and economic development. I think that's a perfectly fair portion of my scope of services. So yeah, I think, insofar as the town has retained my services, I think, I'm happy to assist with economic development. And, for folks who haven't been aware of this previously, we are currently the economic development consultant for the town of Willington, and spent several years as the economic development consultant for Hebron as well. So we've done quite a bit of this.
Well, that sounds great.
Okay, so then we can go ahead and check that next one, economic development consultant, off the list, and move on to enter into discussions with owners of desirable parcels for development. And it was generally believed that this was important, but as of yet, either ongoing or incomplete. And I think insofar as, there are still those properties, and the town's economic development is not done, that's still an important effort to carry forward.
Yes.
Yeah, and a good example, John, is that, I don't have a clue as to what the guy who owns the gravel pit is looking to do with that piece of property. We certainly know he is looking to economically develop that property or sell it to somebody who is, but we're certainly not working the system to influence what goes there.
Sure. Yeah, so an ongoing taking up a schedule of these ongoing outreach efforts would be useful. All right, so next is develop brochure highlighting areas for economic development. Again, most people said not complete but still relevant. A few basically said not really oh no, still relevant. So everyone believed it was relevant, but not sure of status. Elaine, I'm not sure if a brochure ever was completed.
No, it was
Okay.
not. It was, we had discussed a lot with planning and zoning about coming up with something to go ahead and explain all the steps of what you needed to do if you want to, bring a business into town. But that's the only kind of pamphlet or anything we ever really discussed getting done. But yeah, until we know how we're going to market it and what we're marketing, then yeah, no brochure yet. It's just an idea. It's a good thing to have when we actually have something to sink our teeth into. A piece of property, maybe a developer who's interested, and then go out and see if anybody else is interested in doing that in that area and on that property. But we certainly we have tried to identify along Route 6 anyway, all of the areas for development, so that we kind of know where they are.
Mhm. Okay. So that looks like it wouldn't take that much of a push, but it's still an important priority.
Yeah.
And then the last, it's related, I guess, is marketing the best and available parcels to commercial brokers, which I think is sort of probably along the same lines in terms of completion and priority.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Any other thoughts about this section? No. Okay.
No.
So, all right, so now we're on chapter 10, Andover Town Center. Move forward here. Okay. Which is promote, expand, enhance Andover Town Center using Main Street approach. Generally considered, if you look at the two blues, not complete or uncertain, but still very important. I think that's fairly clear. Eric, I mean, a lot of what you work on has been focused on this sort of thing. I don't know if you had any additional commentary here.
No, I look at the kind of the accessibility aspects of this and try to push that. The original concept in the last plan of conservation and development was to use Center Street, the Van area, and up 316 as quote unquote the downtown or the town center. While it has some characteristics of a town center, it doesn't necessarily have a lot of the characteristics. We are getting ready to go with the study grant to hopefully make it walkable, the length of that walkable, and connect both the trail and the town hall. But that's most of what we've done. We haven't really been successful necessarily and turning that area into anything that resembles the true town center.
Okay. And yeah, so then pursuing that, being prepared to apply for various grants to enhance and create walkable town centers. Certainly being prepared, the town has done, and as Eric notes, we have a grant in-house to develop a master plan for the connectivity of those elements of the town center. So that's well underway. Implement recommended strategy for Andover Town Center. I think that's probably going to be the work of the next 5 to 10 years, I would suspect, Eric. And particularly if we're going to get some designs, done this fall into the winter, I think that's probably the to-do list, right? So the next,
John,
go ahead.
in my thinking on the town center concept is, the pendulum swung both ways and is now coming more into the center. When I read through the plan of conservation and development, it had this vision for Center Street being all these multi-story buildings with shops on the first floor and apartments on top of it. And since we weren't able to acquire 12 Center Street and the old firehouse got condemned and all that kind of stuff, I said, well, that is never going to happen. But I do like the model, which it was trying to do where retail activity gets taken off of the main Route 6 corridor, like they did over, or trying to do on Horton Drive over in Hebron, and build back away from the street a little bit and build out a block, which when the thing that changed my mind on this a bunch was the nice tie-in to the rail trail. And so I don't know what the town center thing might look like at this point, but I do think there's a segment that you could probably do something with, and maybe it won't be as big as the pictures currently that are in the POCD would lead you to believe, or what we saw the Yukon presentation describe. But that is an area that we could build out away from Route 6 a little bit, tie it into the rail trail, and I think there's something there. I just don't know what it is yet. So I think that's an area that we need to work harder to figure out what is a reasonable and good use of that little section there.
So I think right. The events of the last 10 years have sort of forced a reconsideration of what this could be. But I think that's, again, so we're looking back at what has been done, and obviously steps were taken, but there were some obstacles that may force a change of direction. So I think, keeping the concept out there, but approaching it a little bit differently is probably where we're going to be moving forward. Okay. The next would be the established blight ordinance to correct issues at 12 Center Street. Vast majority believe that that had been done. I think, is that fair to say?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Acquiring 12 Center Street to avoid potential negative uses and to guide future development. A lot of people weren't sure.
That
Obviously,
definitely did not happen.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the only big red X I think we've got so far.
okay. Well, so we want to add a new. Well, I guess the question is that still a target?
I don't
Or
think
are we sort of abandoning that as a goal?
Yeah, I think we've abandoned that as a goal. We had it available to, at a really good price. People in town didn't want to pay to get it at a really good price. And somebody else bought it.
All right.
Which is the issue, John, with the town purchasing anything, and we are subject to the town meeting, and it is up to the townsfolk to either vote yay or nay, and they said
course.
no.
And they said no. Okay.
So there was no money to do it. Though I think there was open space money. There was some open space money, and it was looked at, possibly using open space and just making a park out of it. But that really didn't get it. Still, the townspeople were pretty much, no, not going to do it. We're not going to acquire that property.
Okay.
So best laid plans, but
Of course, it's you're not gonna bat 1,000 all the time.
right,
Um,
which does bring up a real issue, and maybe we want it in our current POCD, try to come up with a plan for the town to acquire property. We haven't. The only property we've acquired is property that people have given us.
Mhm.
I don't think we've bought a piece of property.
Specifically for the point of reuse, redevelopment, not conservation.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And when
So
we do the survey of the town, that's probably something to ask the people. But I think that question was asked in the long-term study plan back in 2018. Do we want to spend money to buy property to have developed? And everybody said no. I'm going from memory, but that's what I recall reading on that survey.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't want their tax dollars toward buying property for economic development, period.
Yep.
Yeah. We did get one piece though, Jed, from the Merritts
We did.
out on
Yep.
out on the highway
That
that we kept it is in commercial.
Yep. Good point, Scott.
Well, part of that is commercial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one piece
little
from the
corner
Merritts
piece.
that was commercial.
Yeah, there's a great little piece out there too. So we can, good point. We need to have as a goal, figure out what to do with that, to take advantage of it.
Dead drive-through liquor store.
No. Must be a cannabis shop.
All right. So where we are next is establish village district zoning for the area as recommended. A lot of uncertainty. People really don't know where we're at. I could be wrong. I don't believe we have village district zoning at this point.
We do not.
Nope.
Okay. And I guess, so there wasn't a lot of strong feeling that it was a critical element or something that should be carried forward. So I don't know if that's something, that we want to abandon at this point or reconsider. But we don't have to decide that right now. This is really just a status check.
I guess the question is, what is village district zoning?
Generally speaking, what it is zoning that has some additional ability to regulate design considerations. The state has a sort of a carve out within their zoning enabling that allows for the establishment of the village district with specific design guidelines, such that any new construction or substantial renovation would have to satisfy design considerations and go before a design review board.
Yeah, because I know when we were talking about LADA and the village node, we were discussing appearance of buildings. in that area, and what the streetlights would look like and things like that. It almost sounds like that's kind of what you're talking about, establishing what that particular area would have for an appearance. Yeah.
Right. So,
I mean, it's not like it wasn't discussed, but
Yeah.
but it's still like we don't have a plan yet to do it.
Yeah. So there are a couple of towns in the area. I believe Coventry has a village district in the center, like a couple of other communities. If you go out Route 6 the other way into Brooklyn Center, Connecticut has a village district. But it's largely, it encourages sort of traditional historic and mixed uses. So it's not strictly residential, it's not strictly commercial, but it is very heavy on design considerations. Okay, so that's probably something to revisit or reconsider.
So now okay, it's important. Hasn't been done.
It was a high priority.
Yeah,
Mhm.
high priority.
At one time, it was a high priority.
It was
Yeah.
a high
Well,
priority.
So I guess, I mean, so yeah, it was. And I guess the question, I mean, no, the reactions were, you only had a couple of people that responded, yeah, it's still important. Most people just had no idea. But,
Yeah.
but, didn't have, no idea, but a sense that it was critical. But again, this is your survey. It's, this isn't binding.
And for the commission, I think it's important that we keep in mind, we're trying to figure out what is it that we want the town to eventually look like, and how do we take it there? And I didn't think we were going to head to the end point as described in the current POCD, but I think there's still merit in it. We just have to figure out what is it that we want it to be, and then point ourselves in that direction. And that's the point of the exercise. So do any other members have overall general thoughts that we ought to be looking at this as a special little section, or should we just let nature take its course on that, or what's the commission thinking?
I think that the village district zoning would be good. I already look at some of the houses both on 316 and Center Street, that thinking we need a way to encourage people to use some of those to make some small businesses that would be great for a village district. A coffee shop, gift shop, maybe dentist, something, maybe get a bank in there sometime, get something. And I think if it's not zoned to encourage that, you're going to have a hard time getting people to consider it even.
I agree. This is the third plan of development I've been involved in, and a key portion of all of them was how do we deal with a town center, because that gives Andover a better sense of identity. Because right now you drive down the street and there really isn't anything. You don't know if you're in Andover or not, and even driving around. So I think this is a critical point that needs to be worked on and not forgotten or let happen to nature.
Okay, so it's something we just need to figure out, what it is we want it to be. We didn't hit the nail exactly on the head in the last POCD, but it's still an important thing that we should be working toward. We just need to refocus it and figure out what it is that we're looking for.
Exactly.
Okay.
I would say that the town has an adaptive reuse, historic preservation by adaptive reuse section, 4-15, which is pretty flexible if anybody ever really wanted to use it. So, and we've encouraged some people on Route 6 to consider taking some of the older houses that are there and do that. We just never really got anybody to bite. But there's a fair bit of flexibility in the current zoning regulations for that already, if you do have a historic, house. So.
Okay.
Do we need maybe to get some more help with reaching out to other people, other areas to encourage people from other towns to come here and do that kind of thing, and not just people that already own the house. Like a town planner kind of thing. I don't know if that's something they could help us with.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, again, it certainly depends on the nature of the properties involved. You don't want to force someone out because they're not doing enough with their property or not doing the right thing.
Yeah, of course.
It's a matter of identifying goals and then putting in place incentives to create that kind of opportunity. But yeah, so that's okay. I think we're on the same page here. So we're now on the number here. Research cooperative model is discussed to attract, I assume rather than attractive, to attract retail activity in town center. What, sort of a mix, not complete, but not complete, but still important, and then just not sure. I don't have enough information about the cooperative model to know where we're at with this.
I don't know that we've done anything on that one, John.
Okay. And I guess the question is, I mean, it's about half the people thought it was relevant, half the people had no idea. I don't know if this is something that was pressing enough that we want to revisit as is a cooperative model.
I think, with our survey of the town, we need to, re-verify or ask what kind of businesses do people want to bring here, and then, build that into the plan for this, and maybe try to go out and get one,
But it does throw in the words town center, which is, we don't have one yet. We don't have an idea of what the town center is. So to then talk about attractive retail activity in town center is like, and where would this town center be? So
Sure.
I that's part of the problem with the question. It's like,
Sure.
town center.
So yeah, it all flows from the establishment of that concept in the first place.
Correct.
Okay. Through the IHZ process, develop detailed concept plans for town hall property. Now, IHZ I know is something different from what this probably is. I know IHZ as incentive housing, but
that's what I think this is.
That is, in fact, there was a study done a bunch of years ago. We got a grant to study incentive housing zones in the town of Andover.
Okay. Yeah.
So
this is probably 15 years ago.
Yeah, probably. So one of the things that came out of that was the town has a large piece of property right behind town hall here, that has a lot of potential for, some level of higher density housing, whether it's age restricted or not. But, the question becomes, is the town willing to look at that? And there's a couple parcels that the town controls right now that may or may not be good for that. So there were some preliminary development plans to look at how it would look, but there wasn't anything that was fully fleshed out.
Okay. Fair enough. And then once consensus is received and concept plan is developed, consider formal RFQ for town property. Those two would seem to kind of go in concert. And so not a lot of progress made on those lines, and maybe thoughts have changed about the best use of some of that land, but worth revisiting, perhaps in a follow-up survey.
Well, the UConn students' plans were using that, there were a few plans that were using that property. And that was interesting. They were basically informed, they were told to use town property. And so that area by the town hall was used in a couple of the plans. So, certainly not a throwaway, should take a closer look at those plans.
Very important. Yeah.
Just for my reference, if you don't mind. So here's the hopefully This is refreshing. Here's the school, town hall campus right in here.
Yep.
Which properties are we talking about that were examined?
That one with that your arrows
You
on.
have your
This
cursor
one
on,
right
go
here?
straight. No,
No,
the
that's-
next one up.
To the north, the larger one. Yeah, okay,
Yes.
11 School Road. All right, that goes all the way out to the trail.
That's
Correct.
the one.
Yeah. Okay. That's a big meatball right there. Okay.
There is.
So the town basically has two pretty big chunks of property that it could consider if it was willing to for development. That is one. The second large parcel is one located off Shoddy Mill Road. That is where our current transfer station is.
Oh, right, sure.
So that is the other one. They're both roughly 80, 80-acre parcels.
Mhm.
So, but it's gonna be an effort to convince the town to be willing to do it and to develop it. I don't think, to me, both of those properties would be amenable to an affordable housing, some sort of affordable housing development. But getting, and I think today the state is pushing it so hard, if you really had a proposal that the town was behind, you could probably get the state behind it and get some significant funding. But the big question is, can you convince the people in the town, to implement an affordable housing, development in some form?
Right. Okay.
Yes, I do think it's important from the affordable housing and all that. And so we need to keep the priority up on that one. That's one that I think really in the next 10 years needs to get some real progress on.
All right, I'll put a star across both. All right, so now we're
So
now in, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, at this point, John, what I think we've gone through 3 of the 6.
Yes.
And in an interest of time and not shortchange everything else, I think maybe we should put the next 3 for the next meeting so people aren't getting antsy with wanting to head out and shortchange other stuff. But I think we got a good start on that, and that gives us half for next time, and I think that'll work out well too.
Yeah, and I'm now the new chairman of the Commission on Aging, so I guess I'm gonna be involved in that too.
Oh, congratulations, Elaine. I thought you weren't going to sign up for any new stuff.
Yeah, me too. My plan failed.
Okay, yep. Well done. Okay, well, thank you, John. That's a good start, and hopefully something at some point starts coming out of the mist, and we see what it is. Moving on to new business item 7B, receive application, set public hearing for zone change, licensed daycare facilities, that sort of thing. I'll turn that over to Eric.
Okay. So there was a change in state law. Well, thousands of changes in state law, but the one we're interested in at the moment is PA 23-142. And what that does is that changes the discretion the town had to regulate, child care facilities in residential zones. Before, the town had the authority to regulate, decide when and where it was appropriate. Now we do not. It is by law as of right in the state of Connecticut. So the problem comes in is that our current zoning regulations have it as a special permit use in the ARD, and don't really mention it in the Lake District. So I submitted a recommendation, and the reason this is kind of critical now is part of what the state law did is said this, the CEO of the town has to sign an affidavit every single year attesting that we did in fact change the regulations, or if we have not, give the state a date by which we will change the regulations. So I have until like January to submit that to the state. So my suggestion was just to go ahead and make the change, since it doesn't really matter that it's state law anyway. So it's not like we could enforce our regulations. And that is what I submitted to the commission. I also had a conversation or an email correspondence with Mark France. And I said basically that my concern with that is I really didn't understand what their wording, you know, for how, what I don't want is this to be an open-ended thing where any size childcare operation, I mean, can you have a, you know, a 500 unit childcare center right next to a residence in the town of Andover? So so I believe Mark has gotten back to Jed with his recommendations on how to word that correctly, which are far better than mine. And so at this point, unless you have questions for me, I'm just asking, I'm not telling the commission how I want you to word it. That is entirely up to you, and that is your decision. Just that what we're trying to do is comply with state law. It's really kind of that simple.
Okay, that's got everybody excited. So the extent of this change is probably going to be as extensive as what we did when we changed the ARD, allowing a municipal building in the ARD. You know, we put that in as a special permit. In this case, we take child care center out of special permit and put it in the as of right section. And so there's probably about three things Attorney Branch recommended putting a couple of definitions in our definition section to just limit the size of what the daycare center is. And if I remember correctly, it's to, you know, like 5 people or something like that. The other thing that I was thinking of doing at the same time is Marina, can you allow me to share my screen there? And I'll see if I can.
Yes, I'm gonna unmake John the co-host, and we'll make you a co-host.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead and try.
Yeah. So does everybody, do you see the screen moving? Sometimes when I'm sharing screens and update it, it stays the same.
Yep, we see it.
Yep, it's
Yes.
moving.
Okay. So I'm trying to go down. That's submitted pending. Okay, so back the end of last year, this is after review by Attorney Branch. This was the petition for amendment to regulations that the town gave to planning and zoning. And in that, we addressed the first 5 items, which were all in the ARD section, maybe even 6. So the first 6 items were all addressed and resolved. But I chose at that time not to deal with section 7, which is the Lake District, and 8 and 9, which is the industrial and the business district. Since we're going to have to go in and tweak, you know, what's as of right in the Lake District, I figure now is also a good time to correct these next couple of things that refer to the Lake District there. And what that does is, it takes, right now, we have, as of right, you can put a park, playground, or private beach in the Lake District. I don't think that's what we want. I think we would like to have that by special permit. So we'll take it out of there and put it into, the special permit section. Same thing with churches, community houses, schools, and all that kind of stuff. So there was a couple of changes that were very similar to what we did to Section 5 for Section 7 that we didn't take care of back then. Now's the time to do that. So coming forward, we will put, when I change Section 7 to be, what Eric's asking for, I'll make those changes in there too. The last thing that I want to do, and I don't think we took care of it. We've got a section, if you remember back from the Scott Beebe kennel application, you could have a small kennel as of right in the ARD district. I don't think that's right. I think it should be by special permit. And so I would put some words in Section 5 because I'm not ready to change the kennel chapter yet, that kennel can be by special permit. And that should force us to go any kennel, make it special permit. So that's what else I'm trying to incorporate while we take care of these couple of things that Eric has. In my goal would be to coordinate the public hearings for all these changes, this one, the sign one, the lamppost one, so we're doing public hearings all at the same time. I don't know if Eric is willing to, that might preclude us getting it done by the end of this year, but one of the options is that he can, the letter that the first selectman signs can just say when it's done, and if we've headed substantially down that path to finish it early in 2024, I don't think that would be a showstopper. Anyhow, that's what I was thinking of as we went through what Eric was just talking about on the change needed for daycare. Any questions on that? Okay, so I will make that so, and we'll talk about that at some future date. If Eric could bear with me, I would like to set the date for a public hearing on this at the next meeting when we set the public hearing for those other couple of changes that you wanted to.
Okay, so you're gonna wait, and next month you're gonna set the public hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the on that? And I did send to everybody out, the same little thing that had the petition that Eric was requested a change for, the public act that went along with it. And I don't know if anybody opened it up, but it had 7 pages of requirements, and I couldn't figure out why we were only addressing one of the many. But that's the one that the first selectman needs to sign that we're in compliance with. So that must be the one that counts. But I didn't want you to spend your time going through the all the other stuff in there, which will be work for some future date. Okay, next item up is the annual report. I sent that out to everybody. Anybody got any feedback for me on that? And if nobody had a chance to read it, I understand that too. We're not under the gun to get that submitted yet, so we can follow that up at the next meeting if that's what we want to do. If everybody's happy with it, I'd be happy to take that feedback now. But if you haven't read it, probably should. I did get some good feedback on last year's report. I appreciated that then, and I'd appreciate folks looking at it now. So hearing that nobody's jumping up and down, say, let's talk about it more tonight, I guess we will put that off until next meeting as well. Next item up is approval of the minutes from our regular meeting of August 15th. And I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting on August 15th, 2023. Thank you, Scott. Any discussion on those minutes? And I had no comments on the minutes as they were presented. Any comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote on approval. Ann Creme,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Steve,
I'll abstain since I wasn't there.
Ann Blanchard.
I will also abstain.
Okay, and I vote aye as well. The motion passes 3-0-2 with Steve Nelson and Ann Blanchard abstaining. I did have one comment on the minutes for Agent Hallisey and under the new business section for the pickleball courts. It said Agent Hallisey gave information on playground possibly needing a special permit. We'll revisit. I don't know if you've got anything on that for us, Jim, but if not, put that on your list so we could talk about that at the next meeting too.
Okay, I did that.
Okay, yep. Next item up is correspondence. Jim?
No,
Okay. Moving on to administrative reports.
yeah, it's been pretty busy, a lot of accessory structures, sheds, garages. I think it's time of year. And some enforcement activity. I've not moved on either of houses of worship. I hope to in the near future. I am dealing with a garage that went up without permit, which is really problematic at 357 Lake Road. Grimaldi property. You may remember the subdivision. It was a little contentious. Anyway, dealing with that, I did get, and I hope to meet with the owner this week. Throughout time today, and I didn't hear from him, so I left that open for tomorrow. I did get a promise compliance removals vehicles on Merritt Valley Road by the end of September. I'll follow up on that. Other than that, I have some complaints, miscellaneous complaints that I'm working on as well. No town. That's all I got.
Anything on the over
I'm
application?
sorry, yes, I did meet with Wendy Kopp and I followed up with some direction. And I strongly suggested that she did of site plan approval. And the regulations allow her to pretty much continue to use that for residents and a business. What's interesting about that particular property and the application of our regulations is that it's residential uses in business zones, business and industrial are special, they're site plan allowed by site plan approval. Houses that were in existence at the time of the adoption of the regs, which sometime in the 70s. So that's not a non-conforming use. So the abandonment of as a residence is not really affected. And the site plan approval will really clean it up for her. And she also is not using it. What she has are home occupation permits, variety of them. And none of them really are in effect. None of them really are solid right now. It's not being used as a home. So her best move, in my opinion, is to move on on site plan approval. Great for her to just clean it up and be done with it. But sell property at some time, such time, or borrow against it. So I'm working with her on that.
Okay,
Any questions?
Jed, did we ever get any information about the well down on Merritt Valley, where the location was for that home-based business?
Yes, that was quite a ways away. That was several hundred feet away.
So he was approved for the salt then?
Yes.
That's good.
any other questions for Jim?
I hope it's in a covered structure.
Yeah, it's concrete.
Yeah, I thought he had a pretty decent plan to protect, the ground from salt. And it looked like it, hopefully it will be a short-term basis there. If he continues to grow his company, he might, expand into a different place, but
The regulation was 200 feet, or not a regulation, the best
No, best
management practice was 200 feet.
I forget the exact number, but it was. The well was in excess of that number of the.
Yeah.
As I recall.
Good.
and I have nothing to report from the Inland Wetlands Watercourse Commission. Next up's public comment. Looking through the list here, I don't see anybody from the public that's still here. I think everybody's gone. Next regularly scheduled meeting is Tuesday, October 17th, 2023. At that meeting, we'll talk about dates for next year's meetings, and we will also talk about the type of meeting, in-person, hybrid, online, or what have you. And my thinking is it might be nice to go online for at least over the winter months there, but we'll talk about that next month. Miscellaneous. Anybody have any other items that they would like to talk about here tonight? Okay, hearing none. I'll make a motion to adjourn at 8:47.
I'll second.
That was, I heard Scott second that. Thank you. Just as quick to go through a roll call. Ann Cremay,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Ann Blanchard.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate the input. Appreciate you showing up, and we'll see everybody next month. Enjoy fall starting this weekend.